Continuing from where we were last time, we're on correlation versus causation. So what this is about is I want you to know the difference and ultimately why there's a difference. We're going to get to why today. We'll get to more of it on Friday. So I mentioned last time our brains automatically make this mistake. And as evidence of that, advertisers use this a lot. So when people selling products, they're rarely selling their product with an ad. They're trying to sell their product, but the ad is rarely about their product per se. It's almost always building up some association between their product and something that you find pleasurable. As an example, we can go to this old Salem cigarette commercial from back in the days when cigarette companies were allowed to advertise on television. I'm not trying to push cigarettes on you. So you didn't see much about the product in that, right? You saw people, a nice setting, happy, music, etc. And placed in the middle of that was words about the product to buy, but not about what the product is. That's extremely common. You've seen this all the time. You know, the beer commercials that show up in football games, it's, you know, well, often scantily clad individuals of one gender, and that sold in connection with a product, or the old Milwaukee beer commercials about guys with beer guts out to here, out in the boat, fishing, and here's this giant beer cooler, and it doesn't get any better than this, or the Marlboro man up on the top of the mountain, on his horse, not showing you him starting the grass fire that burns a forest, for a few sections of land, but it's often about image. This is the kind of person or the kind of setting that will appeal to customers, and we're plopping our product down into the middle of it, but we're not really saying anything about our product. Coca-Cola does this, Pepsi, etc. And it's because our brains are sort of putting all this together and thinking, oh yeah, if I get this product, that'll help me feel this way. I mean, it works, right? Advertisers are pretty ruthless in using the scientific method to figure out what works. Now, the correlation does not imply, so the theme here, right, is correlation does not imply causation. I mentioned this last time. And not only do our brains make it all the time, but journalists use this routinely. So I've got some newspaper clippings from all over the place on it with this mistake. Study abroad found to improve graduation rate. What does that convey to you? Does that convey correlation or causation? Causation. You read the first sentence of the article. 60% of UT students who study, not that you can see this, who study abroad graduate in 4 years compared to 45% of non-participants. What is that a statement of? You got two different levels and two different groups. It's a correlation. So the title is jumped to causation from a simple correlation. Read the article and there's nothing in there to really say why it should be causal. This is a paper out of England a couple of years ago. Schools blamed for youth crime rate. Politicians love to blame all kinds of causes for correlations, right? And usually it has something to do with their opponent or the opposing party. But it's schools, something going on in schools is now the reason for all the crap that's going on in society. Very common. How many of you worry about whether your cell phones can give you cancer? A few of you, right? Where do you get that idea? Where did that idea come from? What? The 90s. We should blame everything on the 60s. But I mean, what kind of data? Correlational, right? And it's not very good correlational. It's often anecdotal. It's like, oh, you know, a few people got brain cancer and they use cell phones. But we haven't seen a massive increase in brain cancer since cell phones became so common. It's correlational data, but we might want to pay attention to it, but still, we got to realize just because we have a correlation there doesn't mean it's causation. Diet and health, absolute horrible, horribly difficult to do science on. And so every few years, there's some new threat in our diet. It's like, oh, this is a problem, or this is good for our diet. And this article actually talked about changes over a decade or more, where eggs, so out with the old was, you know, old advice was this. This is the new advice. So for a while, eggs were bad, probably because of boosting cholesterol. Salt was evil for a while, right? Salt was absolutely bad. Now, if you have high blood pressure already, then you want to watch salt intake. If you don't have high blood pressure, salt's fine. And then what was this one? Fiber. Oh, that was good. Reduces the risk of colon cancer. They thought that. Apparently, that's completely gone away now, right? Now that they've actually done proper studies. So again, we rely on correlations. We try and infer causation from it. It's often wrong. If you're into athletics, this was an article published several years ago. Someone did a study, I think it was on Olympics, and they looked at the color of the jersey versus the winning rate, and they found that. So the article, the data actually was, across a range of sports, we find that wearing red is consistently associated with a higher probability of winning. That is a statement of what? Correlation. The title implies what? Even the first sentence does. Wearing red increases the chance of victory in sports. Now we're getting into some of my favorites. Laws may reduce drinking rates, right? What does that title imply? Causation, right? May reduce. Researchers found that in 7 states with particularly strict alcohol statutes, such as the mandated registration of beer kegs and restrictions on happy hours, the rate of binge or high-risk drinking was 31% lower than the national average. That is a description of a what? Correlation. Again, the article is writing a title and maybe part of the rest of the article may have it in inferring causation from correlation. Study finds sex leads to higher drug use. Many of us can identify with that, I'm sure. Teenagers who are sexually active are more likely to drink, smoke, and use illegal drugs, according to a new survey. That is a statement of what? Correlation. They're doing this all the time. And then my favorite. Higher beer taxes would reduce STD rates. So, a government report says raising the tax on a 6-pack of beer by 20 cents could reduce gonorrhea by up to 9% because, as we all know, cheap beer is a leading contributor to the spread of STDs. Right? So this is a statement of what? Causation. It's all based on correlation, and what they've done is go back through time and look at STD rates following changes in tax rates in different states. The data are correlational. Now, it's a different type of correlation. It's correlation, you know, they're looking at data over time, but it's just a correlation. And given a bit of an imagination, we can probably all come up with reasons why, you know, it might not be the beer tax that's driving it, which leads me to where I want to go with this, which has nothing to do with taxes or STDs. Let's just put down lots of newspaper headlines or news headlines. Mistakenly argue causation from correlation. So why is this a problem? So the problem in using correlations to infer causations is hidden variables. And this, the hidden variable thing, the third, we'll call it hidden third variable law, all mean the same thing, is going to be kind of driving the theme for the next at least 3 lectures. If x is correlated with y, there are 3 classes, if we call them, but we'll just say 3 possible causal models. X causes y, y causes x. Right, so back any of those newspaper headlines, the model could be causal, the underlying model could be causal, but the big one is this third possibility. Anyone want to guess what it is? Yep, so a third variable, which we'll call z, affects / or causes both x and y. And I'm simplifying this. You can get more complicated, but basically just there's something in there that's driving it that's not what we're looking at. It's a third variable. So what I want to do is go back to our correlation that red cars have higher accident rates than other colors. And just remember that we listed several possible explanatory or causal models. So what I want to do is put a table to you to sort of help you start dissecting this and thinking this through. And I will tell you the kind of rule to use. We decide if red is the cause of the accident rate. Which I'm going to say is AR, by asking whether the accident rate would change if you changed just the color of the car. You left everything else the same. You magically went out and with your wand, and the car color is changed. And you have to assume the driver isn't pissed off that someone changed the color of the car. But we ask whether the accident rate would change if only car color was changed. Everything else is the same. So this is what you want to pay attention to. If you want to ask, okay, is there a third variable here? You know, we got x versus y. If we change x, is y going to change under the model, right? We're posing different models. So we're going to have a table here. Going to have 5 columns and 6 rows. So we want causal model. You can put here red cars. Question is why high accident rate? There's a lot of redundancy here. Once you figure out one column, you can often figure out all the others. Will the accident rate change if color is changed? Is there a third variable in the causation? And what is it? Or what is the causal variable, whether there's a third one or not? So these are our columns. Our first model was, well, I don't know if it was, it will be, dangerous cars tend to be red. So why is there a high accident rate for red cars under this model? Should be able to fill that out or fill something out here. So let's start. Let's go to this one. Will the accident rate change if the color is changed? And we're going to let you vote on this. So, 286, 457. And feel free to hack it out with others. 286, 463. So think about it. Think about going in. If I change car color, the accident rate is going to change. If you can answer that, you can fill out the rest of the table. Okay, actually a little better than last hour. So most of you said no. Does that mean this model invokes a third variable? How many say it does? How many say it doesn't? Ooh, we are chicken today. Okay, let's go force you into this. Come back to clear results, stop poll. Okay, does the model invoke a third variable? Answer that one. Let me put the numbers on the board, actually. 286, 444, 455. Is this a yes? I better check. That could really lead to some confusion here. So this is the third variable. Okay, so most of you are getting it. These two are opposites. If there's a third variable, then the variable in the correlation isn't going to change when we change that variable on the car. So if there's a third variable, we're saying it's not color. We're saying that if you change the color of the car, the accident rate doesn't change. What is the causal variable here? It's what? The driver? No, it's the type of car. We're saying there are some cars that are dangerous and some that aren't. So what's causing the accident rate is the type of car. It's pretty much written in the causal model. This would also be the same. Why high accident rate? Because it's a dangerous type of car. Let's try a second one. Risky drivers prefer red. Take a minute to fill out any of those cells you want. On your own, try and think it up, and then we'll try and answer the questions. Again, we imagine we're going around magically changing a car color, nothing else changes. The car type stays the same, the driver stays the same. Will the accident rate change when we do that? So try and fill in all of them if you can. Let's go back to the, will the accident rate change? So the numbers are on the board, top one, so we can look at the table. I think we need a little higher turnout here. Okay. So most of you put no, which means we are invoking a third variable. What is the variable? Type of driver. It's the drivers that are the problem. And again, it's red cars have higher accident rates because they have worse drivers. Buy them. Oops. Purchase them. A red car is a different model now. Forget those other ones. Different model. Red cars are hard to see. Try filling any of the cells out that you can. We'll answer this one first, but pretty much if you can fill out any of these cells, you've got it, because if you think the causal variable here is something other than color, then you're not invoking a third variable. The accident rate will change if the car colors change. And if it's a different, not something other than color here, those flip. And these two columns are pretty much the same. Ooh. So I'm going to go to, so try writing those in, thinking through it yourself. And we'll answer this one again. Will the car color change? So we're back up here. Distracting, oh, there's something about red that, you know, whether you can't see them at certain times of day, so you don't know there's a car there and they get piled into, or they're distracting the driver, all of those work.
Going back to the risky drivers for red, if you change the color to like yellow, would that not deter the risky drivers having that car?
It would. That's why we're setting this up so it's magically that, you know, all the cars are where they are, and bing, you change it and the driver isn't changed. It's like the driver's going out and just driving it under those circumstances. So yes, once you start invoking that, you're back to the old, the original problem. So that's why this got to be kind of a magical way we do this. And that'll come up as also in the next one that I put up there. So you have to pretend color is the only thing we're changing. So red car is hard to see. Okay, so 23 of you are, well, 22 of you are doing a pretty good job, but that means most of you are just sitting there not doing anything. I haven't a clue how well you're doing. Red car is hard to see, so the accident rate will change if color is changed, which means we're not invoking a third variable. The causal variable, if in this case, it's going to be color is the causal variable. So, and they have a high accident rate because of the color. So one more. Red cars are kept longer before salvage. Old cars have high accident rates. So in this case, we're going to do our little magic exercise, go around, change colors of cars, and ask what their accident rates are before people have time to salvage them, if the color is changed. Sorry, I got to clear this one out. Don't send anything in yet. Will the accident rate change if we change color? So it's important you get this because the next thing we're going to is what's called controls, which I think a lot of you understand already, but we got to understand if a variable is controlled, which means you got to know what variables are, and it all fits into sort of the same picture. So fill out any of this table you can again and answer that. Ooh, okay. Where this is closer to equality than before. So, and getting closer. So let's give you a minute to think about that. See if you can convince someone. or you're doing it out of pure boredom. So, and his question's very germane here. We're not allowing time to salvage cars after we change the color. We're simply taking the cars as they are, changing colors, and asking, is the accident rate at that point in time different? And think of this any way you can, right? Think of, well, what's the causal variable of the high accident rate? You know, once you fill in any of these squares, basically the rest follows. They all fit together. Oh, that would have helped. Guaranteed that no one had a mistake, though. So how many find it harder to fill in the table than to answer a multiple choice? Same. How many found the homework today easier than the ones I have you do where you have to fill things in? You don't know this. You got to be kidding. Wow. Is that because I gave you the articles?
Yes, and then you gave us the exercises to pick them rather than
Well, it changed a little bit. So someone make it, so most of you are saying no. Why? That's because it's the edge of the car, right? It's the old car. So red is causing it to not be salvaged, but it's actually age, which means we are invoking a third variable. We're going to continue with this next time and then move into controls.